Welcome everybody to another live episode of PBR, Proof Beyond Reason, coming
Semi-live.
at you. Semi-live. I'm live doing it right now.
If you're listening, you're live.
If you're listening, you're live.
If
Ooh.
you're alive. If
You're
listening, for
alive
sure.
right now.
Ivan's back as
That's
well.
it.
Yeah.
Religion, man. I was out for a week, you know. I got hit. I got a drunk driver. God bless his soul, man. But I got hit and I'm here. I'm back.
Welcome
back in the basement in the water house.
Yes.
Not going to hear any trains, but you'll definitely hear some water running.
And part of the reason why we got so much energy is that he brought these airheads, and I'm looking at it, and airheads are nut free and gluten free. That is what's up. They
No one knew.
They have a lot of artificial stuff, but if you have a nut allergy or gluten allergy, Airheads is your snack. So
That is
Airheads,
it.
hit us up, Airheads. If you want to be our sponsor, we down, airheads.com.
Now,
let's get it.
Let's give a shout out to our actual sponsor, Matthew Movement. Where would you believe? You guys can check them out at MatthewMovement.com or Matthew Movement on Facebook. Check them out, guys. Super, super hot clothing line. And super excited to be here, man, this week. Super excited. We will be talking about this week evil. Evil. So let's just jump right into it, man. Okay, so last week and the week before, we've been touching on fake news. We've been touching on the occult. What is an occult? And all of that, people can say that those things lead into or are evil in itself. And so this week we're going to touch on what is that? What is the word evil? Where does evil stem from? Can it be categorized? Is it subjective or is it relative? So what is evil?
I mean, Stanford University categorizes evil as anything immoral or malevolent, dividing it into two different categories, natural or moral evil.
Any immoral or what?
Malevolent.
Malevolent.
Is that a Disney film?
That is
Malevolent.
That is Maleficent.
Malevolent.
And that film, a lot of people were upset about because that made the bad guy, the evil person, look good.
Yes.
It was a twist on what the bad person that we've always seen, like, wait, that's the witch, that's the person, and now it's good.
You know that the show that actually became one of the greatest shows to ever be made was Breaking Bad. And the good guy who originally started as a good, honest employee became what you would deem an evil drug
crooked
lord. And he was the most favorite character ever, you know, like in TV history, among the most favorite characters ever.
You see a silhouette of a bald head and you know who it is.
You already know.
Jumpsuit.
Yeah,
It's
Heisenberg
happening
all
a
day.
lot.
Yeah, and just so we all know, Mike the Baptist is suffering from what was it that happened? He's suffering from something evil that's happening to his voice right now.
This is this suffering, you know. It's just the voice is gone, and there's stuff going around. So
okay, so
I'm good.
So
This is part of the problem, though. Just so you know, it's a perfect segue into this topic. It is suffering.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So I think it's good to start off by knowing that this question of what is evil is actually one of the greatest mysteries in philosophy. There's not a straight answer. There's not, or at least a straight answer like 2 + 2 = 4, and we can all agree on that. And if you don't agree, you're crazy or you're just being illogical. Right now, I can believe in what I think is evil, and you can have your own opinion. There really, in philosophy, you have a broad spectrum of what people would classify as being evil. So what, Mike, what do you have? What is evil?
I mean, G put the definition correctly. I mean, there's two sources based on philosophy, two different categories of evil. You have natural evil or physical evil that has to do with disasters like tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, things that are not necessarily evoked by by humanity, and then you have the moral evil where humans are breaking what we would call a moral code or moral law, but obviously the moral part of that requires a transcendent moral framework, meaning that all nations, all people groups would have to agree on a set of moral laws that abide regardless of culture, age, society,
Which
and so
we
forth.
don't. Right now,
Well,
we don't.
well, I mean, I would argue that we do, in the sense that, I think our culture today would disagree, but I think practically, as we look at how life is lived, stealing, lying. If we just go to the most basic of stealing and lying, those two I think are the most prevalent moral laws that everybody, regardless of where you are, is true. If you lie to anyone, doesn't matter if you're in an indigenous country or you are in a major city like New York City, you lie to somebody, you deceive somebody, you hide the truth from somebody, they're going to be mad. They're going to want to know the truth. If you steal from somebody, having brought in a meal that they hunted or a laptop that they purchased, and you just take it from them, there is this sense of, as we talked about in previous episodes, there's this oughtness to life that we ought not to lie, we ought not to steal, and you can just continue to go down, in terms of, the most prestige relationship that we have in marriage relationship. You ought not to cheat on your spouse. There's a certain sense that these moral truths are transcendent regardless of where we find ourselves. So I think in that regard, the moral law would apply, because once we see there's theft, once we see there is a lying, and then we go back to other things that we can say that's tangible, murder and things like rape and those, and the abuse of the innocent, like children and so forth. I think across the board, regardless of where you're from, everyone can agree that, I saw this thing on Facebook the other day. I'm not frequently on Facebook, but when I was on Facebook, I saw this thing and it pissed me off, so I just scrolled off of it real fast. Was this grown man was beating the hell out of an infant, like your daughter's age. No way. And she was just in her changing table, and he was just beating her face in.
He would get murked.
Yo, and I could only watch like 3 seconds of it because I got so upset. Like, I want to meet him, and God forbid, like I would jack, like, oh my gosh,
even thinking about
just
it
the
right
thought
now,
of what
like,
I want to do to this dude, just watching that. And even more than that, like, for anyone to have the audacity to post that is disturbing. And we see more of that. We see more people not just posting things to make awareness of evil, but it's an entertainment for people to post things that seem evil. And why are they evil? That's where the question, that's, I guess, what we're going to talk about today, is why would it be constituted as evil?
Yeah, because if what we're saying is true on the moral basis of evil, then evil really isn't subjective, and evil really isn't relative.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
we can use forms of it.
We've had, I've heard debates, and I've heard different lecturers talk about how in, some countries there might be an acceptance to, killing other humans in a cannibalistic way. There might be some acceptance in some societies to do, X, Y, and Z, but those societies have proven not to survive long term. The
Vikings,
the ruthlessness of and the acceptance of that nature of evil proved that their society was not going to last in a progressive way. So the void of a certain moral standard that's transcendent became their downfall. And I think we've seen that in many other dynasties and so, yeah, Rome, Greece, Persia, other dynasties in some of the Eastern countries where the complete void of a transcendent moral framework automatically put them in a position where it was their ultimate downfall.
That's crazy to think about, because if you think that may be completely true, that Rome, such a strong nation or such a strong empire at that time, collapse, and really what broke the legs of all of that could be exactly what you're saying. That it's the evilness of the immorality is killing it from within.
Well, the lack of morality stems from us people, humans, deeming ourselves to be God, deeming ourselves to be the ones that determine morality, determine what is right and what is wrong, questioning the purpose and the authority of God and his position as the one who creates the moral framework, and our duty to fall in line with what he's established. When we play the role of God and we determine that we're going to establish and it's not to say laws in terms of how we need to behave in particular societal situations, but overall the transcendent understanding of a moral framework, and then building laws around the moral framework, i.e. the Ten Commandments and so forth. I think we put ourselves in a position, and those societies put themselves in a position where they became God. They were the determinant, and that relativistic mindset got them in trouble.
Definitely relativistic. Because you look at that and there's no way. I'm just thinking in my own head, thinking about that same video you're saying. And I mean, we can parallel that to what you're talking about right now with Rome and how they did things and the immorality of what they did. And it's like, I just can't see how that can ever be relative. Like, in my own head, I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no way the acts that they did, but yet it was because they were brought up a certain way, or this king said that it was supposed to be deemed that way. But it's funny that you mentioned God in the mix of that's where we really lose it, is the fact that we ourselves now want to kind of take this foothold and say that we're God. We want to step on the throne, and we now can create our own moral code, and we can create our own morality and what that looks like. And
I mean, you look at some of the countries that are run by dictators. The people are generally voicing oppression, and they are generally voicing a desire to go back to what was. So in those kind of societies, let's say right now, like Venezuela is going through, there's an oughtness to what they believe how the government should be running, and there's this sense that the government is creating an evil order, causing the people to fall in line in a way that is unnatural to the meaning of life, but also the putting false value on people. And so I think the problem of evil addresses really at the core, what is the value of the individual?
So what is evil then? Is evil, when we're addressing like these things, is evil the fact that I stub my toe and does it go so small and so minute to that point, or I got a paper cut? Because we obviously know the extremes of it: genocide, starvation, beating, rape. Like we can understand that, but where is there a line?
I mean, J.P. Moreland, he's a philosopher, also theologian. He stated, evil is a lack of goodness. It is goodness spoiled. You can have good without evil, but you cannot have evil without good.
So, in the sense that, is any level of suffering, can it be deemed evil? And, I think
that's a question.
Yeah, I think the suffering piece of it it's just telling of a fallen society. But the evil part would be I would imagine the evil part of it would be how does the individual perceive the level of suffering in which,
like a
they're
second
in
level thought process.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. If I stub my toe on something and the suffering so great for me that I realize there is I'm not in a perfect world. I'm not a perfect person.
Yeah.
I have flaws. I have weaknesses. So it kind of puts me in perspective because my foot hurts so bad. I'm on the floor holding my foot and my toes black and blue.
But that tiptoes on the line now of like,
A relative view in that aspect.
Right,
yeah, it
exactly,
tiptoes
yeah.
on the line of act versus
And that's
versus
why,
motive.
And that's why,
so
from the philosophical standpoint, it's moral and the
act
natural
has
or
to be,
physical,
yeah.
right, versus something that is a suffering consequence. But the suffering piece of that, where it's a reminder that we are not in a perfect world, and there are bad things that are going to happen to
we
us.
relate suffering to evil, but couldn't there be the opposite in suffering? Couldn't there be not just evil but good in suffering? Couldn't we find that instead of always looking at suffering as something that's bad?
There can be some good in suffering. Take for example, my mother, she's always had problems. We occasionally go to the hospital every year, but yet she's found that she's become more humble in the aspect. Whereas in someone who has, say for example, a physical ailment, she's finding herself closer to God, like finding more hope. And in that sense, people occasionally, they automatically go to that standard or that point of view saying, because there's evil, there can be no God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard certain examples where if you're taking your kid to get vaccines, or you're giving your cat a bath or whatever, the reaction of your child or the reaction of the cat is fighting, and they feel in that moment, in their context, they are suffering. They're undergoing something. They're undergoing a certain pain, or they're undergoing something that it's against what they would want to happen to them, and they don't see the benefit long term.
That's funny.
Later on,
that's good.
the cat is realizing, I'm clean.
That's good, because a lot of times, when I was an atheist back in the day, hardcore atheist, that's a really good argument right there. Is one that, because who are you to be able to say, well, that's not suffering, and who are you to continue that process and I'm just looking at that parallel God to us, who is God though? But like you're saying, you as the father, I'm looking at my daughter right now and I'm giving her a shower and she doesn't want it, but she needs it. And it's this long-term thing that she'll understand. Right now she doesn't, but later she will, and that's a beautiful parallel.
Yeah, and you as the dad, you are going through the suffering with her because she's crying, and you're comforting her, and you're there with her, and it doesn't eliminate the fact that she is actively reacting to something that she perceives as suffering. Like, she is going through it, but you're right there with her to comfort her, to guide her, to bring her through that, what she perceives as suffering. But then, like you said, later on, she gets it.
Yeah, this normally is an issue. As an atheist, this was a normal issue when it came to theism. Like, you can pose the question of evil, but the question of evil was always attached to theism. Not an issue anywhere else. It almost was like swept under the rug for any other belief system, no matter what you were. But evil, theism.
The problem of evil extends to every worldview, period. Because regardless, let's be real, you're going to suffer and you're going to see evil regardless of the worldview you see. So
I think the issue is, now understanding and being a theist myself, is that the problem with evil is that we're the only ones that think there's a problem. and pose the issue of it being a problem. So everywhere else in all the other worldviews, they kind of sweep that evil problem. Oh yeah, we don't want somebody to bomb them, but I'm not going to throw it on my worldview. Where our worldview is upfront about evil. You hear it tons of times with people that have left the church. Why? Well, they're judging me. What are they judging? In the end, they're really judging something that you did that was evil. Not that I'm not saying that they should be doing that, but these are things that Christianity or religion in itself, depending on where you're from, because some religions are even more strict when it comes to do's and do nots, and the do nots are seen and viewed as evil. And so we're really the ones that say, quote unquote, the problem with evil. And so we kind of throw it out there and say, guys, wait, there's an issue here.
Right.
Like, and I love it that we're able to do that, because in Christianity, we're one of the only ones that can say, hey guys, here, there's an issue here, but hey guys, here's the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Here's the solution. And that makes it real. It's so much more real.
If you go to the extreme of atheism, so let's go back to you being an atheist. If the reason why they go so hard on God, specifically the God of the Bible, you don't really hear, you go online, you hear also, they really go in on the God of the Bible, putting him on trial. And the interesting thing about them doing that is several things, but two in particular that I'm going to mention. The first is, if they're right, there's no God, then the solution is none. Because now the atheist has to wrestle with the understanding that there is no moral framework, there's no person that, or there is no authority that's going to hold this evil accountable, that one day the payment for the evil is going to be supreme. And so as an atheist, should you get abused, should you be a victim of a crime, should you endure any level of what you would deem evil or suffering,
Can't be upset.
then you can't, because if the purpose of my suffering was as a result of being victimized, whether it's a rape or any other type of thing, then I just have to accept the fact that it is our DNA operating in the animal-like system. So we're animals just operating off animal DNA, and that's just the behavior of that person taking it out on me. So it is what it is. You shrug it off and you keep walking. There is no comfort. Mm-hmm. There is no solution. You just got dealt with.
You just exist.
And that's it.
Chance.
You got dealt with.
Yeah.
Things got handed to you, and that's where it ends. And and that's tough. That's tough from just a pure from just a being real, like a real human standpoint. Like,
but they would rather.
They would rather that.
They would rather that than have the accountability.
Well, the reason why is that accountability piece.
They would rather.
It has nothing to do with the fact that maybe God is who he says he is. It's the fact that we don't want to be held accountable for our evil.
No one does.
For my evil. My evil might not be rape. My evil might not be abusing children. My evil might not be those things. But the minute evil, the lies, the little things that we think aren't so bad, I don't want to be held accountable.
And the biblical view puts a God that some people may see puts your life as a Truman Show, and may even go further than that and go into your mind.
Truman Show was a good movie, though.
Great movie.
Truman Show
was
was dope.
Amazing. Yeah. It was super dope. Had no idea that he was being watched.
I mean, as I was watching it, it was like, oh snap! Like,
when he hit the wall, I was like, he better open up the door. The movie better not end here.
Like, these dudes messed up.
Yeah,
they just ain't messed up. But I don't understand how he didn't find out before. Like, he never wanted to go to like Disney or nothing, like, to get away.
It's a perfect example of what you know.
It's crazy.
You get what I'm saying? He didn't know.
It's crazy.
There was no Disney. They literally televised everything.
I mean, if it was me, I would have been like, I want to see what's over there. Yeah. And he never wants to go over there.
There's showers and stuff like that.
So
you
weird.
Don't want to go
anyway.
that way.
Anyway, sorry.
But
Sidebar.
you put that Truman Show, and then you put it to what you're saying. No one wants to be accountable for their acts, but God takes it and Christ puts it to a whole nother level and says, hey, this isn't just the Truman Show on what you do with your hands and your feet and your body. I know what you do in your mind. I'm there. I'm hearing it. I understand the motive. You say that you're angry at this dude for killing this guy, but how many people have you wanted to kill? And in your mind have killed them over and over and over again. I see them both as the same thing.
Or, I mean, how even Jesus stated it when, say, for example, they asked him, or he was explaining how even just looking at another man's wife is basically committing adultery.
And we don't want that. Me as an atheist, when I was an atheist, I felt this false freedom that I was able to do whatever I wanted. And it all stemmed from that the accountability is now off of the table because there is no greater than me. I am the last. I'm it. I'm the dot on the pen. And all of this comes to this question of what is evil. Back in the day, Mike, let me tell you, I would go in, and it's not something to brag about, but it's something to understand what happened and what he took me out of. I mean, here's what happens if we can break it down, right? As an atheist, you have this problem of evil, and I would bring it up to a theist, and I would say, you guys, your God doesn't exist. And I'd go straight to the God. Why? Well, because you have a logical issue. There's a fallacy when it comes to evil. And they say, no, they can both coexist. And I say, so here's the formula. Very easy, right? You have God. And God equals what? God equals omniscient, right? God equals omnipotent, right? And then God equals benevolent. There we go. I had to throw that one up, right? All good. And if you have this God that understands everything, that has seen everything in the future, this God that is all powerful, that can do anything. So now I've seen, I can do, and I'm all good. So I'm all loving, I'm all good, I am the essence of all these things. Then the premise is, this is how any atheist would look at the logical argument for the problem of evil is, if I see that there's going to be evil and I can do something about it, I can see it, I'm omniscient, I can do something about it, I'm omnipotent, and it's in my nature to have to do it because I'm good, then you will eradicate it. So here's where it comes. It now goes from that, right? Now, God plus omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, benevolent equals no evil. But when you put evil underneath that and say, but there is evil, that's where the logical contradiction comes into play. And now, thus, there is no God, or there is no God that is omniscient, omnipotent, and all good.
So the counter question or the counter thought would be, if evil is saw, if evil is viewed, and evil needs to be dealt with, so eliminated, you use the word eliminated, then if I'm God and I'm all knowing, like you said, I'm all powerful and I'm good, or I'm all loving, and I need to eliminate the source of evil, then to what degree of that am I eliminating? Do I eliminate your thoughts about that woman? And now, because knowing that you had those thoughts about that woman, you would be eradicated. It's not an external thing that we're going to eradicate, just only the fact that there was abuse, or there was a victimization that could be viewed. So we eliminate that. But let's say before the victimization came, you being in front of your computer, or you, having a relationship with anyone, and like you said, you want to murder somebody. To what degree of the evil do we then eradicate? So the question is, are you okay with you being eradicated as being a conduit of evil?
Yeah. No,
So-
that's a beautiful.
so-
That's a beautiful way to see it. And I say they now, because I'm batting for. I got a different jersey on. I'm batting for the other team. But they look at it as from starting point. So you're bringing it up as a post Apple,
Right, because
but they're looking at it as a pre-Apple. So Apple, right there, Adam, Eve. That's it. That's where we're at, and we're right before it happens. So
Right.
God sees it. So none of us are here. None of this stuff has ever happened. They're saying, why wouldn't he just eradicate it? Which this is something that goes back to Augustus. This is something that goes back to Thomas Aquinas, to Plato. It goes back far, far, far. People going at each other on this same subject, like we're doing still today. So this hasn't been solved. It's really just my opinion versus your opinion. But one thing I want to point out is there's a premise here that no one ever talks about. All right. So me as an atheist, I'm bringing up two premises. I'm basically saying, one, your God basically, the argument is valid from a point of view of looking at it. But the philosophical, man, I can't speak G today for absolutely. He's got a bad voice, and I can't speak.
because I brought donuts for everybody.
That's
he
what it
refused
was.
to eat them, so
And G refused my taquitos.
everybody's
crazy.
Everybody's
I
jacked
ate a
up
protein
today.
cookie.
So
Eat a
let's see if I
protein
can
cookie
get
that
it
has 30 grams of sugar, extreme amount of
But
sugar.
like 7
And
grams of
then
fiber.
Dunkin' Donuts was brought, and I it doesn't even say how many grams are on here.
Shout out to Dunkin' Donuts if you want to sponsor. Prove you already there.
It
That's all.
does. It doesn't say that. So the premise is that the debate is normally focused on the preposition that starting with God cannot exist with. That's a premise. So I'm basically stating God just can't exist with evil. So you have to believe that right off the bat. So I'm already putting you and saying you're saying that. And I can't do that in a logical argument. I shouldn't be able to state a premise that I have no idea if that's the way you really view it, right? So he cannot exist with, and the second thing is, or would he want to prevent all evils? So those are the two premises that we have to understand. And from that, way back in the day, came an argument which had its own word, which is really cool. It's called theodicy.
Yeah.
So theodicy is basically, it defends, it's the defense of of God's goodness and omnipotence in the view of the existence of evil. So it's basically defending, it's not proving God. So just so we understand that, it is not a proof of God. It is just a defense saying that evil and God there is the ability for them to exist at the same time.
Right. So the trilemma that you mentioned about his knowledge and power. and
I
love.
have knowledge. It takes it off of the table,
right.
because my fallacy in my logical argument as an atheist was broken before I ever said the argument, because I stated a premise that was untrue or unrealistic or not what my person in front of me was believing. So you come back and say, well, no, I actually think that those things can happen. And here's where some things get pretty crazy too, because I don't know if you guys have heard of process theology, or you guys have heard of open theism.
Open theism, yeah. Process
So
theology,
open theism says this. So we guys know we got the omnipotent, the benevolent, and then the omniscient. Process theology says, well, dang, all I need to do is take away one of those. And if I take one of those away, then yeah, the equation that this atheist is telling me works. Because all I need to do is say, well, you're not all knowing.
Right. So,
you
you have to
didn't know.
compromise one of God's
Exactly.
attributes, which Christian faith, we don't compromise any
bro.
of his attributes.
Bro, it is real.
Yeah, I know.
There is process theology, this open theism that says if God lacks any one of these qualities, then the logical problem of evil is resolved. We're good. And people live with that. They pick one. And that's what they believe. Which one do we get rid of?
Then you have other problems that arise because now you've just changed. You've changed
depending
God.
on what you're. Yeah.
So as humans, I'm not in a position to change God. I'm not in a position to alter him. I didn't invent God. So if I invented God, then I could change what I understand and what I believe about him. But because I didn't invent God, God created the heaven and earth, all that is seen and unseen. He's the creator. I'm the created. I cannot alter who he is. I just have to learn more about him. But by doing that and eliminating, then I just create a new God, and that's crazy.
Yeah, that's a form of theodicy that I would say definitely to stay away from. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this since the beginning episode with culture, or in the worldviews, where basically people, they want to see their own God. We've mentioned it earlier before. People don't want to be judged in that aspect of the evil they are doing. But say, for example, you were to present that whole God and evil can coexist. God, yes, there was the possibility of evil, but in the end, it is our choice. We decided to go against God in that nature.
Yeah.
And evil basically is the contradiction of the holy nature of God.
Which brings us to which is a theodicy, which is the free will. Right. So the free, even theologians like John Calvin believed in that version from the beginning, the free will theodicy. And what we're talking about is this. Yeah, we already see that there's a broken problem there. And what we're saying is that while evil exists, God is either not responsible for creating the evil, or he's not guilty for creating the evil. So, and out of those things.
Yeah, so I've heard this example used before where as God's creating, so if he created my leg, he created my leg to do all things that could possibly be done with my leg based on his design. And the use of my leg can be used for both worship, but also can be used for counter worship or evil, the opposite of what it was designed for. So I can either use my legs to walk into a place of poverty and help the situation, or I can use my legs to kick the dude in the face, who disrespected me. So
kick the dude that was kicking the baby.
Yeah, and I would even argue that would be a form of justice, that I can just kick him in the face. So using the same thing that God created, but God giving me the ability to make a decision as to whether I'm going to use it for good or use it in contrast, then that is a choice that I have. So if there is the existence of love in general, having a wife, my relationship with my wife, there are decisions that we have to make in order to maintain our relationship. So it's not a robotic thing. It's something that we have to decide on. We have to decide that we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and that we're not going to do X, Y, and Z.
And there's a decision that has to be made. And that falls in line with Augustus. He was one that said that evil is a corruption of goodness caused by humanity. So it was us, that type of mindset that God was perfectly good, that he created a world out of nothing, and that evil is the result of humanity's original sin, that the entry of evil into the world is explained as punishment for sin, and its continued presence is due to humans' misuse of what they're capable of doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
We then chose it from the start. We then, and because of that, he can coexist. He could teach. There's going into this and knowing how many different versions of this that you can, that is understood as thought. Like there's John Hick believes that he wrote a book of a bunch of theodicies, but one of the things that he said is basically like God, this is all a test. He imperfectly made us, so he didn't make us fully. He kind of made us at 75%. This is the best way I can explain it. He made us at 75%, and then that's why we need some suffering and some evil.
Oh, yeah.
Because it brings us to this point. But then you pose the argument of, so then why do babies die? Because they didn't go through any of those points. They didn't even know what happened throughout that time. So if we needed to go through a certain process to develop us up into 100% of whatever he made us to be, then that in itself destroys the argument. There's some really crazy things people can believe when it comes to where evil came from and how God sits when it comes to evil.
Well, I mean, we put God on trial as the first point. We put him on trial. We question his character. Generally, it's when we've gone through a certain level of suffering, when we've been a victim of evil, we put God on trial because we know, we know within ourselves, we know who he is, okay? Now, I think as people, particularly our culture, we want to bypass our responsibility when it comes to the equation.
You
So
have to pass it. Yeah.
We don't, for one, our culture, we don't want to endure pain. Mm-mm. So, we have lifestyles that we want to uphold, and so we take pain meds. I'm not, and having been in a car accident, I've been taking pain meds right now, but we take pain meds for very minor issues, minor headache, minor knee tweak, in order to eradicate suffering. Like, we want to eliminate suffering so much that we find shortcuts. And I think this culture and this society, the reason why all these things are being brought back up, which are valid as we seek to identify and seek to obtain value as people, because that's what we're looking to establish, that God, God, you're eliminating my value, and I want to reestablish my value. I've been a victim. I've seen suffering, and so people are worth more than what we're seeing. So they're automatically putting a value on people, and not necessarily, attributing some of the evil to be our fault, in the sense that,
huge, yeah.
When there is suffering in the world, or there's conflicts in the world, how much of it is our fault? Even the natural disasters that happen, how much of the natural disasters that are occurring are as a result of our misuse of natural resources, causing environmental disasters? Like, how much of the ailments that we see, the diseases that are happening, the need for all these vaccines and so forth, are as the result of our misuse and our carelessness and our greed. A lot of what we do is self-inflicted, and yet we, and God, in his sovereignty, in many ways, is allowing it to point everyone back to himself. His ultimate desire is not so much at this point in anthropology. At this point, his desire, and at all points, it has always been to demonstrate his goodness and his grace, so that you would see who he is and you would worship him. Like, that is the purpose as to why we created. Now, if our purpose in life was to have ultimate pleasure, is to have no suffering, if that was the main focus of life and that was all that life is, then Ravi Zacharias had posed an amazing question that I heard not too long ago, in that if that is the ultimate reason we exist, is for pleasure, then why is it that so much of the pleasure that we endure in this life, it is so fleeting? Why is it that it leaves us with so much emptiness?
Yeah, we want more.
When we get everything that we think we want, and we have, all the resources
It's
that
not
we think
enough.
we want. It's just not enough. We
It's-
always want
it'll never
more
be
and
enough.
more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not the place, or that's not the purpose. And it always stems back. All this topic that we're talking about stems back to, why was I created, or why am I here? It goes back to origin,
Yeah.
the purpose. Why is it that X?
And how fulfilling it is when you're in what people would call
Right.
his walk.
And that's where we would find the place of our definition. That's where we find the place of our morality. That's where we find the
identity.
place of our identity. That's where we find the place of our value, is why was I designed, or why was I created? So we need to understand that. We need to remember that piece, and we need to go back to what the original issue is. That's the original issue. Is, if we think all these things are bad, it's because there is original intent. There was an original purpose, and that's why we're struggling with this so much, is because we want to go back to what is truly the purpose. And if I were to argue that, our true purpose is to worship God, is for God to demonstrate himself through all of creation and show who he is in all of creation, then the fact that we suffer a certain season, or the fact that he allows certain things to happen, is ultimately to point you back to himself.
Which is another really, really good thought when it comes to there were some people that thought way back in the day that, what would we have without that portion of suffering? How would I really know that something was good? Or how would I, and this was a thought that someone had and said, how would I know happiness without tears? Or how would I know? I don't like what it says, which is basically that we have to have evil because there is goodness. I don't believe when it comes to the bottom of that, but what it's saying though does reign true.
Yeah, but there is a realism to that in present day, but I think we have to deal with what we're dealing with now, like right now, today. Regardless of where you stand in your worldview, you're going to go through suffering. Regardless of how much money you have, you're going to go through, or you're going to experience some level of evil in this lifetime. So that's the reality that we have to deal with. We can't escape that reality by saying, well, the origins of this and that doesn't make sense, blah, 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 and then try to, make those things happen from a philosophical standpoint. Even though we're having a philosophical discussion, what we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is the reality that this is present now. So how do you deal with it today? And as you backtrack to see, well, what did it come from? What happened here? What happened there? That's all good, and it's important because it shows us what the original intent should have been of our life, and why we pursue pleasure. Why do we want happiness? Why is it that nothing on this earth can ultimately satisfy our desires? And those are all great. But the reason why we can go there is because we're dealing with a real problem. There are people who are really going through suffering. And I've said it, I think, the past few episodes. There are people that have really been raped. Yeah. There have been people that have really been abused in other ways. There have people that have really been the victimizers. They're the ones who've murdered. Maybe we're reaching people right now in prisons that have murdered and are in prison, or people have murdered who haven't got caught. I know people who have done things for the military that have taken massive amounts of lives, and I myself, having not the most clean record when it comes to dealing with people. I can put myself in a category of a criminal. You can put yourself in a category of criminal. We can all put ourselves in a category of being a lawbreaker at some point. And, the reality of our circumstance is that we are suffering, and we're going to suffer. And it's there's no way to prevent suffering at this point. And I think what some of the philosophies try to do is try to soften the blow of suffering rather than confronting it head on. and making it a reality, in life.
I mean, yeah, touching upon all that information, suffering in itself, people always occasionally, like we've been talking about previous episodes, say for example, my take on it in the occult realm, when I was jumping from an atheist to being in the occult, I saw suffering as a way of having lessons, so to say. But in my aspect, evil was all that was God, as I was basically on the opposite side of everything. Basically, what I was doing, even though in a sense was evil, I saw everything as good, even though that God was good and righteous. But I never really considered the whole aspect of what we're talking about now is the problem of evil. Yes, there's a problem of evil. We've been talking about it, but also what Christianity focuses mostly on, which is the solution. Mike's been saying it, and Ivan has been saying it as well. God is always the solution. People think, oh, how can God allow evil? God is not going to allow evil. In the end, evil will be dealt with. Evil will be thrown with the devil into the pit of fire.
And with everybody that's passing the baton, because I know we all have gone through that. We've all gone through the phase of wanting to, and are still, like you're saying, Mike, knowing what we know and the people that we know that are suffering right now. You have this wanting and this urge to want to take it off of you. Like I don't want to be accountable for any of this. Like I've done things and I want it to come off. But and you look for that in a bottle, or you look for that in a pill, or you look for it in a drug, or you look for it in another person, some form of idolatry, some form of like even something as precious as like your own kids. And even that, like you're saying, Mike, is fleeting. It's not enough.
I mean, and even some forms of the suffering that we endure, as we mentioned, the question of how much of it is self-inflicted, but also how much of it is us paying a consequence of our sin, like us having a certain level of judgment as a result of what we have done, or what, of a decision that we made or a position we put ourselves in. How much of it is God exercising a certain level of judgment for now to ward us away from the eternal judgment that is to come if we don't cling to the Son?
Yeah. 2 Corinthians, I believe it's 12:9, says that my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. And therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Countercultural, a verse like that is, because we're told at a young age that no, I'm supposed to boast in my strengths. I want my gold star. I want my #1 medal.
I want my best picture on social media.
That's it. I want the best version of me. And God is saying, no, 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 no. Like how you are right now, my grace is sufficient enough for you. You can rest in that. It's beautiful that that word is used, that now rest. How many more? It weighs on you wanting to do that, wanting to be the best version of you, wanting to take away the accountability, wanting to say, well, dang, I did all this bad, so I need to do good, and I need to do. It's not enough good, not enough good. I need to do more and more and more to wash away the bad that I did. You'll never be able to do that. But Christ is saying, come, because my grace is sufficient. It's over. I'm enough. All that you wanted, I'm enough for it. And now you can rest.
And and Christian faith is the only worldview that provides the real solution for suffering, that provides the real solution for evil, in that it will be dealt with. It is being dealt with. It has been dealt with in the person of the Lord Jesus Christ, in the reality that he has suffered alongside of us. He has endured every kind of evil when he was here on earth. He confronted every kind of evil when he was here on earth. he set standards that were not previously acknowledged, and people hated him for it, and they killed him for it. And being in a position where he is God, he positioned himself in such a way, being all-knowing, all-powerful, where he allowed suffering to happen to him. So forget just preventing suffering to us or to you, whoever's listening. He could have stopped it for himself, where he said, right before, when he was going to go on the cross, I could send legion of angels right now, just annihilate all this. But you know what? I'm going to endure suffering for my people. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to relate in every way imaginable, in fulfillment of the law, to suffer alongside of you. And in fact, I promise that you will also suffer. But the good news is that me having the ability to eradicate all suffering for myself, I'm going to endure it. And not only did he endure it, he promised the resurrection. He didn't promise the resurrection in a fictitious way, in a mythical way. He promised a bodily resurrection. He's like, these cats are going to come search for me. I'm not going to be in the tomb.
Empty.
And it was the empty tomb. And then he presented himself to people.
Days.
And there are non-biblical sources affirming the historical accuracies of that. But in addition to that, you see the surge of Christianity just rise up, because people not only saw him at post-resurrection, but they were the eyewitnesses, over 500 eyewitnesses who were gonna imagine 500 people in your neighborhood to be like, yo, Christ resurrected. They can all attest to the resurrection of Christ, and they walk around town. They're like, yo, this dude resurrected. Remember Christ? He walked around. He was healing people. Yo, dude just resurrected, and they know these credible people.
And back in the days, they didn't even account for the women and children.
Yeah, right. So, and we're talking about all kinds of people. We're talking about people in positions of power. We're talking about people that were, nominal people, maybe uneducated people, all kinds of people. Like, yo, this guy has a really good reputation. If he said it, that's crazy. It must have happened. And then not only through the word of mouth, but the power of God through the presentation of the gospel from Peter and the apostles and the Holy Spirit descending on people, transforming people's lives. The surge of Christianity to go from like a handful to just thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people that were willing to suffer for the testimony that Jesus resurrected from the dead. That's crazy. That's insane. It had to be. These people were convinced, not from a philosophical way, but from a real tangible point of view, that this happened.
But also, the touch of Christ touched their lives.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
And in that, there's, proof, so much more to you that believe and haven't seen him yet. The evidence is in the touch of the Lord, the breath of grace that he gives us. And when he touches us, that being able to suffer for him comes from this yearning inside of just knowing, hey, like, I'm enough. I'm good. That's it.
I mean, the promise of hope. That's what everybody's clinging to. That's what
we
this
want,
whole discussion really is. Where's our hope lie? Does our hope lie in the fact, do we hope that God doesn't exist so that there's no accountability, but then ultimately there's no payment for evil? There's no justice for evil. There's no forgiveness for my evil. Like, there's a nothingness. So if I get sick of life, I just take my life, because there is no ultimate purpose or meaning. So there might be a hope and a comfort in that, but there's a real hope and comfort from the fact that God the one who created us, the one who God he suffered alongside us. Like, bam, he suffered, and he promises that it is finished.
And that transformation that we all look for, that looking good, that wanting to be better, that number one, that transformation is another transformation that happens. We now become transformed lives. not in the way that we would have wanted, in a fleshly and my own type of way, but I'm now transformed.
And you know, the false understanding of some of the skeptics are, okay, well, I'll just commit murder and then I'll ask Jesus to come to my heart and then I'm good. Like, nah, dude. Like, when Christ touches you, like when you have a relationship with Jesus, you mourn over the fact that you know what I'm saying? Like, you mourn over the fact that you just lied. Like, you feel like you murdered a man when you felt like you just like your life is just completely rocked in one way, where you mourn the sin in your life, and there's a real suffering that you go through, but then you're also mourning the sense that, God, I'm not worthy of your forgiveness, and you walk around every day remembering all the sin, all the crimes that you committed, and that you have been forgiven, and you're not worthy of that. Like, that's crazy. Every day you're going through that.
You can't pay for it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Unworthy.
And it's not just a clean escape. Okay, I did this. I'm going to just accept Jesus. That's not the way it rolls, homie. Like, that's not the way it goes. You go through it. Like, you really go through suffering knowing that you've been forgiven of crimes that you've committed. You were the victimizer.
And
undeserved. You want to give everything back. You want to go to the person you victimized. You're like, yo, forgive me. Here's the money. Here's the shirt off my back. I'll go to prison for you. Whatever you need.
That's the transformation that we want to see.
That's what's necessary.
That's what's needed. That's what's needed. So following up, understanding evil. Evil's with us. Evil's all around us, and we're seeing now that evil has been not only paid for and not only addressed, but evil has also been destroyed and conquered on the cross. So thank you guys for listening to PBR. Again, this is Proof Beyond Reason coming at you guys live. This is Religion Man. We got Mike the Baptist. We got Geology. And please remember, we want to hear what you guys have to say. We want to hear. If you thought that we were completely crazy on what we were saying, please, we have a Twitter. We have a YouTube, we have an iTunes, we have a Facebook. You guys can come at us, or you could just inbox us at proofbeyondreason@gmail.com. That's probably one of the easiest ways. Or just comment wherever you guys hear us. Like us on Facebook, Proof Beyond Reason, and you guys will get new episodes. Let's give a shout out real quick to Matthew Movement, one of our sponsors that's putting us out there. Real clothing with a purpose. Clothing with some design and some purpose behind it, man. Wear what you believe, man. Get some nice raw clothing on, man. Get some stuff going.
That's what I'm rocking right now.
That's it. That's why his voice is like that. It's too hard for him. It's too much for him. And you guys can check us out next week. We will be coming at you with our fifth or our sixth. Man, we're on a roll right now. We're going. So you guys are coming at us right at the beginning. And it's Proof Beyond Reason, man. We want to hear. We want to hear. We want to hear.